So we're going to start. It gives me great pleasure to welcome a welcomer, who is Arnaud Morin, who is an independent curator, but also in this context, the new artistic advisor for Jumeirah. And Jumeirah have very generously, kindly, and intelligently decided to support this session. So will you please join me in welcoming Arnaud Morin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shumon. Does it work? Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Shumon, and good afternoon, everyone. It's an incredible pleasure and honor to introduce this panel powered by Jumeirah. First of all, I want to thank the Global Art Forum for proposing this thought-provoking platform and bold approach that is more than necessary today, especially in the climate of uncertainty we live in. And to paraphrase you, Shumon, on your first panel, change keeps on changing, making everyday life feeling more unsettling and unpredictable than science fiction. And to continue paraphrasing, this time Venkatesh Rao from the opening session, we're dealing with this crawling feeling of absence of consensus-based reality, a double helix of normalcy and chaos that is constitutive of what we call today this new normal. A situation where one could feel that he could cease to understand the world. Don't worry, it's going to get more positive right after. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Art Dubai and to congratulate the entire team for this wonderful iteration, of which Jumeirah is a proud partner. I want to thank you for your trust, Ben, Benedetta, Pablo, Junja, Alexi, and Zain, and all the dream team, so thank you very much. As an independent curator and now accompanying Jumeirah arts and creative industry sector, it was important for me to start thinking of a cultural partnership strategy for Jumeirah that was not merely creating something brand new, something shiny and big, let's say, but rather to support and contribute to the wonderful existing and polymorph ecosystem of Dubai, of the UAE, and of the Khalif region. And also, it was important for us, while brainstorming about Jumeirah engagement in the arts, that not to limit to visual arts, but also to integrate this global discussion on the state of the world today, really, and how a key hospitality leader, a brand that is rooted in Dubai and its Emirati identity, should bring its contribution on topic that are intrinsically linked to its core activity and own paradigms, in a way. That is architecture, livability, experience, or again, urban planning. It was thus natural to associate Jumeirah to the Global Art Forum that brings together brightest minds, including artists, creators of all sorts, curators, technology, thinkers, etc., to explore the ideas shaping the future of culture. Furthermore, when Shumon talked about the wonderful opportunity to have Rem and Charlie Koolhaas as guests, obviously I got excited. And it was a wonderful way to link this to Jumeirah Developing Art and Creative Industry Program, since they have themselves initiated in 2005 in Dubai a series of observation and analysis on what was this post-oil city states, an observation that they're going to develop today and extend in the context of the new Gulf. To finish, and going back on Jumeirah involvement in arts and culture, I would like to say a few words before leaving the floor to our incredible panelists. First of all, thanks a lot to Michael, Julie, and John for their trust, who are with us today representing Jumeirah. We're embarking on an exciting adventure, which I'm happy and proud to bring my contribution to. And for the audience today, I'm glad to share with you our first action in the field of art. We proudly expanded our partnership with Art Dubai by supporting with Dubai Holding the development of an ambitious publication highlighting 50 Emirati creatives, edited by Mir Nayad. And we also just opened the first Jumeirah art journey that you can discover in Madinat Jumeirah through the different property, Amina Salam here, Al Kassar, and Al Nasim, with exclusive artwork from Mona Hatoum, Shirin Nishat, Zainab Al Hashimi, Azal Khubaisi. So thank you very much. And to close, I would say that I would like to say that at Jumeirah, we're trying to show that art is not a symbol, decorative afterthoughts, but it's truly weaved in the hotels and properties DNA. It's a statement. It's a philosophy where creativity and hospitality merge into a warm, hopefully, and welcoming Majlis of Culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arnaud, and thank you, Jumeirah, so much. So for a little bit of context, just to set this up now, we're calling this the New Gulf City. 20 years ago, Rem Koolhaas and Charlie Koolhaas landed in Dubai to begin their respective observations and analyses of what was then, in 2005, the ultimate 21st century startup city. Their collaborative research at the time understood the convulsions of this post-oil Gulf city-state within a broader historical force of a new post-Western future. We're going to hear from Rem first, and then Charlie straight after. So I'm going to introduce Rem, and then Charlie when she comes up. But of course, Rem Koolhaas is a Pritzker Prize-winning architect and writer whose many books include Delirious New York, SML-XL, Junk Space, Project Japan with Hans-Ulrich Obrist, and Countryside, A Report. From journalist to scriptwriter to architecture's great novelist, polemicist, Rem's influence over the last 50 years of culture and political culture has been unique and immense. Will you please join me in welcoming Rem Koolhaas? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will talk 15 minutes. And I want to explain first that this is a combined lecture with my daughter. And I want to explain that my daughter is a sociologist and a photographer. And I'm an architect. And I want to show how photography is, in many ways, a much better medium to look at a city like Dubai than architecture. So this is the kind of first moment that we were confronted with Dubai. And I have to admit that I was totally floored or totally overwhelmed because none of the recognizable features of my profession returned in this image. And it was a kind of very useful kind of image because at that time, as Shumon was saying, I was almost a messenger to the West, that the West's conception of cities was no longer tenable, and that the West had to get used to the fact that its heyday was over, and that the city would now be formulated by the Chinese, by the Western Asians, and in the future by Africa. And that in itself was a kind of very new phenomenon, but also kind of very exciting phenomenon. So we went to, and I have to also explain, this is not a combined effort, but we both pursued our own interest and occasionally intersected. So we went to a real estate exhibition, and maybe the first time I went, and we saw astonishing kind of elements. But also very soon we kind of saw elements that we thought we recognized and that were kind of done by fancy kind of Western architects, and that basically were done here without any agony or trauma. And this was at the time the combined production of formal and official architects from the West. Very painful if you put it together. And what we kind of realized that there was a kind of very similar and almost identical effort from the architects that were working here. So that was already a kind of very large awareness or shock. And the second shock, and this is perhaps the most important trigger also for me for my kind of continuing relationship with Dubai, was that the West at that point had an incredible condescension, both on the left and the right, for what was happening here. One of the major sociological critics of America had called Dubai Walt Disney meets Albert Speer on the shores of Araby. And basically that was kind of produced and printed in a book which was called Evil Paradises. And basically at that point I was kind of very worried that in the kind of space of 2 years, the axis of evil would be launched and Evil Paradises would also be launched. And that basically neither one of them was aware of the other one or seemed to care. So from that moment on, I saw it as my responsibility in a certain way to explore, and mostly to understand what was going on here, and understand, of course, both in the form of observation, but also in the form of architecture, although architecture is not a kind of very useful form of understanding. So I would say that this is a picture of Charlie, and it kind of basically, is a kind of very head-on picture of a certain phenomenon. But also in our pictures, you see that there were behind every screen, behind every wall, there's a kind of other world, and that the apparent simplicity of Dubai is constantly challenged by complication and by alternatives. It was also kind of very important to completely break with the idea of that there is nothing in the desert, and that the desert can be nature, but a kind of very unique kind of form of nature that again took time to kind of interiorize. There are many kind of sublime experiences in Dubai if you're aware and if you're willing to recognize the sublime, as in this case, in a kind of more or less abandoned billboard, or billboard waiting for a message which is not yet there. This is another kind of similar image of Bavadi, an exciting entertainment area that was also kind of realized simply as a screen and as a kind of film set. This was our kind of first moment there. And of course, what we both kind of felt very strongly is that Dubai had from the very beginning, and already for a long time, its own authenticity, as long as you were kind of willing to watch it, and also that there were kind of so many stories, and that the kind of famous stories of the inhuman conditions under which workers had to kind of be there became very three-dimensional if you actually looked at how those workers lived, but also why they were there, and what they felt about their own kind of presence here. This was, for instance, a kind of single kind of bedroom that contained how many religions? 4?
10 different nationalities.
10 different nationalities slept in this kind of single bedroom, and were very proud of their kind of coexistence. Maybe the most emblematic kind of picture for me is this one, which really opened also kind of my eyes for a very curious kind of form of coexistence, and also a very curious form of tolerance that exactly at the moment where the West was turned out to be completely incapable of conceiving how to live with other cultures, with other religions, with other phenomena. Here, that was perhaps one of the greatest attractions and one of the greatest qualities. So, when we started as architects then to kind of really produce our insights in Dubai or in similar phenomena, and can realize that one of the unique qualities, of course, of all these cities together is that they're kind of very small minority of citizens and of are living together with enormous amounts of expats, and that kind of somehow they kind of mutually succeed in creating, maybe community is not exactly the word, but creating coexistences that are perhaps also kind of working particularly well because they are not considered permanent. And in that sense, I think that there is a kind of shared excitement to live in a kind of cities that, a kind of city that has never been kind of produced in history with the kind of same speed, almost as if you're participating in a shared definition of what a city can be. So very soon, in 2006, we produced something about the Gulf in Venice and kind of basically announced that in the Gulf these phenomena were happening. And I think that it was totally stupefying for an architectural audience, mostly, as you can see, white, to be confronted with this completely other and completely not normal kind of situation. We tried to kind of find forms of explaining what was going on here, something completely beyond the orthogonal, simply a collection of patches, and maybe that is the most beautiful definition of each component of this city, a patch. And therefore, a coexistence of patches, typically a patchwork. One of the kind of hypocrisies of the West was, of course, that an enormous amount of Western consultants has been contributed to the realization that is then denigrated by Westerners. And what we also kind of realized that there had been already since the 70s an enormously serious participation of the kind of rulers in trying to define what was best for this world and how to think about it. So, as an architect, the first impulse I had was to kind of basically propose something enormous, something that completely did not participate in anything that I had earlier advocated, perhaps, nothing extreme, nothing exceptional, and simply proclaiming a stop to the iconographic, the kind of star architect, and all the terrible things that we have fallen kind of victim to in the past decades. It was totally unsuccessful, but except in my eyes, it was a kind of really kind of wonderful breakthrough that also enabled me to step away from an abyss that whatever. So it was a big building, and the kind of building itself was kind of conceived, you know, as a kind of section of city and could perform. A second kind of version, a second attempt of that was kind of perhaps to introduce in Dubai a kind of sense that a metropolis is typically worked over generations, which means that the bigger it gets, the more difficult it becomes to change it. And so here we kind of proposed that perhaps Dubai would be a kind of ideal place to try the starter kit for a metropolis, so that on a very limited area, you could perhaps begin with kind of metro, all the complexities of infrastructure, and then kind of grow out of that kind of city. Very, very kind of dense, and where we also kind of studied the kind of maybe the potential of a number of kind of icons that could be distributed across the city to somehow animate it, because we were not willing to take away all the space for architecture to use their imagination. So we went into a kind of feverish icon kind of production as a kind of goodbye to the icon. And this was maybe kind of my favorite one, a totally generic kind of office building that is then kind of warped and creates interest. This was going to be built. It was on a billboard, but the American 2008 crisis put an end to it. Here you see it. So there's one more kind of thing that we tried for Dubai, which is maybe the kind of provisional the provisional outcome of all this kind of thinking. Dubai at some point found it interesting to require into some kind of serious thinking about its future, wrote out a tender. He participated in the tender with a number of Nobel Prize winners, a kind of very fancy and impressive team. Here you see, the space that Dubai still had and has to extend itself or to kind of reinvent itself. And this was kind of perhaps maybe the most radical proposal, that a kind of city like this one, and I want you to relate this to the kind of first image I showed, this kind of endless patch landscape. It can never have a master plan. It can never be perfect, but when it's imperfect, it can change and it can be kind of adjusted, and infrastructure can be added or subtracted. That perhaps it requires a new kind of conceptual framework to be kind of worked on and kind of invented, maybe similar to NASA. No bureaucracy is able to kind of really plan this. No bureaucracy is able to master it or to control it, but maybe in a kind of room like this one, you can in kind of real time kind of make the decisions, okay, this road comes here, this road comes here, shall we connect them or shall we disconnect them? This was our gift to the kind of professional planning in one step, move away from all the classical ideas and kind of move into the future. Okay, then we were asked by, and that was the kind of second formal approach, by Michael Shintram, who was then the director of culture of Dubai, who had the difficult task of realizing Zaha's opera building as a commercial enterprise, to do a second exhibition in the West, in Vitra, Dubai Next, where Charlie's picture, but she can talk about it kind of later, were kind of one of the keys, and you can see here the installation itself was kind of more engaging than our installation in kind of Venice. People kind of greedily kind of opened all the kind of possibilities, and you see that the audience 2 years later is kind of slightly more eager. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rem. It's very satisfying to see so much of that research and thinking that, for me, was incredibly influential. One of the reasons I'm still here after 20 years. So, Charlie Koolhaas is, Rem had his own adjectives. I'm going to have my own adjectives to describe Charlie. She's an artist, she's a writer. I think of her as an ethnographer with a camera, and a very committed chronicler of world cities. Having lived in London, New York, Guangzhou, and Rotterdam, Charlie is now a recent full-time transplant here in Dubai, where she's working on a new book about her maternal grandmother. With that, will you please join me in welcoming Charlie Koolhaas? Thank you.
Thank you. I go down. Okay, so as Rem mentioned, in 2007, we presented my photographs in Dubai Next. And in 2011, post-recession, I presented these photographs again here in Dubai at the Downtown Pavilion with the Third Line Gallery in Brown Book. But we called it Dubai then because it took 3 years to bring it here, and by that point, the photographs were totally outdated. I continued to work in Dubai and with Dubai since then. So in 2012, my photographs were published in the book Evolving Spaces, published by Brown Book. And in 2019, I put them together with my photographs of London, Lagos, Guangzhou, and Houston, to show the way in which the global market economy was connecting the 5 cities. And in 2021, I returned to photograph Dubai for the 50U book, which was a celebration of the 50 years of the UAE's existence. So what I will talk about now is what has changed since 2005 to make Dubai the new normal. Back in 2005, each building in Dubai was like an island, disconnected and isolated by a perimeter of desert. Today, the skyline has filled in, and buildings collaborate, their glass facades reflecting one another, creating a kind of coherent collective beauty. As a city has aged, so have its buildings, their beauty now historic, most visible in the older areas like Satwa and Jera. These neighborhoods give the city its own distinct aesthetic and make it harder to accuse Dubai of simply imitating. This is one of my favorite buildings in Dubai that really show its beauty. Today, the skyline is full. The buildings are full. The roads are completely full. Unlike 2005, there are now pedestrian spaces. Back then, mostly construction workers walked the streets, but now street life includes everyone. At Seoul DXB this year, a distinctly Dubai form of street style is evident, an expression shaped by its many influences, proving that fashion here is being innovated rather than just imported. COVID-19 proved that Dubai is not just a city of optimism, but also one capable of managing a global crisis better than many other parts of the world. Delivery drivers now dominate the roads, vital to the function of the city. This is undoubtedly the new normal, something pioneered and perfected here, whereas in Europe it only became important during COVID. Dubai, with its delivery drivers and walkways that allow us to move seamlessly from building to building without ever stepping outside, feels like a prototype for life on Mars, and therefore of humanity's future. The cinematic light of the sun remains extraordinary from every angle. Even the pollution contributes, casting the city in a mirage-like glow. In a world now defined by virtual reality and AI, the meaning of the word artificial, once used to criticize Dubai, has changed. It now signals something cutting edge. Dubai, more than any other place, mastered the blur between fantasy and reality. Today, we live to take pictures, so naturally the role of the photographer has changed. The mobile phone has come to dominate the world, and the urban environment has become a backdrop for selfies. Dubai, the ultimate stage for the influencer. In 2005, brands were encouraged to be here. Now they must be here to remain relevant. Dubai proves that we as a society have fully abandoned minimalism. Its maximalism, once seen as strange or gaudy, is now the global aesthetic. Today, the hotel lobby, a key public space in Dubai, has become the aspirational aesthetic of the global citizen. We all want to live in a hotel now. And I think this lobby looks kind of like Kim Kardashian's house. It's the same. Even wellness and fitness has overtaken that of America. Kim Kardashian, since 2005, rewrote global beauty standards, shifting the ideal from the stick-thin blonde woman to the curvy, dark-haired Arab woman. Just as the skyline of the city has changed, so has the profile of the Arab woman. The embrace of cosmetic surgery here feels different from that in the West. In Dubai, the lips, the breasts, the cheeks, echo the voluptuous curves of the city's architecture. They reflect the ambition of the place, a refusal to be limited by what nature gave us. It's part of Dubai's psychology. It's a city striving for perfection, for reinvention. Here, we have the desire to live out our fantasy lives in fantasy bodies in a fantasy world. It reflects Dubai's unique relationship to nature, not as something to be preserved, but something to be overcome and reimagined. Rain, for instance, has become a possibility. It's an achievement, part of Dubai's ongoing efforts to defy natural limits, of which the key role of the golf course is another example. In other contexts, it has been regarded as an assault on nature. In this context, it seems like a preservation of it. And in this photo, Rem is trying to figure out what he actually thinks about golf. Nicotine in 2005 seemed outdated, but we can see, if you look anywhere in public space, vaping has become the true new normal. And I found this, Dubai chocolate in a tiny Swiss town. And to me, this represents a new normal. In Switzerland, they now want Dubai chocolate. This is just one more sign, not only of the West's decline and the East's rise, but that Dubai can now deliver quality, not just quantity. Dubai was a global pioneer in combining tourism and construction into one singular, thrilling experience. You could swim in the sea as diggers filled the beach with sand, and it is still a place where the city can visibly transform over the course of a single holiday. There is still vast emptiness, still potential. Compared to 20 years ago, the city feels full, and yet it is only a fraction of what it will become. And surely that's where the enduring optimism comes from. And as Shumon mentioned, in 2004, so roughly 7 months ago, I moved to Dubai after working here for 20 years. And I think it was, in the end, in 2005, it was a sort of strange place. I remember when I told people I came here for the art world and no one could believe it. And now Dubai seems to be not just a plausible place for an artist to live, but maybe the only, or soon to be the only plausible place for an artist to live. So, yeah, so that's it. That's why I'm here.
Thank you so much. That was even better than I imagined, and I imagined a lot over the last few months that we've been organizing this. I also really need to thank Rita for incredible patience and fortitude and diligence in bringing a lot of factors here, always bringing Rem and Charlie into anything. And Rita, you've been amazing. Thank you very, very, very much. A round of applause for Rita. Rem, I want to, and Z, I'm going to ask you a question, by the way. Okay, yeah. Well, no, I'm going to let you ask a question to them, so okay, all right. Rem, I want to go back to the beginning of your presentation. I'm so glad you brought up Mike Davis and that quote. And I've just got another part of the quote from, I think, from that text. This is you in 2005, where you said, "The recycling of the Disney fatwa says more about a stagnation of the Western critical imagination than it does about Gulf cities." To be a critic today is to regret the exportation of ideas you have failed to confront on your own beat. What were you referring to when you wrote that?
Well, basically, I found it kind of really repulsive that America was kind of simply criticizing people for Disneyfication while they were the original inventors of it. So it was a kind of very simple comment, but it was kind of really also really said with an enormous amount of regret, because the regret is that kind of somehow the situation that any architect is facing is so complex at this moment that actually we were in desperate need of good critics that could explain our situation, explain what we are doing, explain what we needed to do. But the critics kind of simply disappeared and kind of stayed in almost completely predictable and increasingly reactionary kind of tones that basically were useless for us. I mean, the main, this is a totally irrelevant comment, but the main critic of the New York Review of Books, Martin Filler, declared today that he regretted not having met Gavin Stamp as some kind of Edwardian kind of English dandy. So that is where architecture criticism is.
And then we were here together in 2007. We were both releasing books. I released a book with Badoon and Tony Carver and Marcus Meeson. Something I wrote this down at the time, and I've always thought about it, and I'm glad it's in reference to again another thing that you showed. You said, "I'm always nervous when Americans use the word evil." Are you still nervous about when Americans use the word evil?
Is the word nervous still relevant if you think about America?
Exactly. Right. Well, it's both a cartoon evil, it seems to me, and also the most devastating true form of evil. Charlie, you've gone through, I think over the last week or however long you've been preparing this session, thousands of your photos. And I wanted to ask you what it was like to revisit them. And also in your amazing book, City Lust, which I'd love you to maybe explain a little bit, what role does the Dubai chapter play in relation to the other cities in that book?
So it was of course really interesting to look back at the photographs just to see how much, visibly how much has been achieved and how much has changed. And I remember when I came to Dubai there was all these posters of what the city was going to look like, and you couldn't believe it was actually going to be real. And it has actually materialized. So it was, and that was interesting. And then when I came in, I was living in Guangzhou in China. So that was the kind of production capital of the world at that time. And so it was also a city which, similarly to Dubai, had loads of foreigners. Everyone from around the world was coming there. So it was this kind of the same kind of multicultural city. But what was interesting about Dubai when I got here, I realized that there were so many African traders here, and there were so many Chinese, and that this was really actually one of the most kind of important points of connection between Africa and China. And it was really, central to China's kind of rise and distribution of its goods, basically.
And could you just say something about this book, City Lust, and how you organized it, and again, the role that Dubai plays in these other chapters? It's really interesting.
Well, what was interesting, or what I found when I was in Guangzhou, and I found it here as well, was that there was no longer that these cities, because they needed to accommodate so many foreigners, that they were no longer a foreign place to these foreigners. They contained the homes and these recreations of homes for all of these foreigners. So, you know, you could exactly go to an Irish pub and feel like you're, you know, in Ireland, or you could, you know, go to an Indian restaurant and you could feel like you're in India. So they would, and I found, and that was what interesting to me, that basically cities were becoming portals to other worlds. So in this, and also we were talking about globalization and the global economy, and I remember at the time Obama was giving these speeches about the dangers of the global economy. And then I was sort of looking at what it was really look like, what were the details, and it was, you know, I called it City Lust because that was a China-made version of Sex in the City perfume that I found in Gift Village in Dubai. So in a sense, I wanted to show the unserious, the absurdity, the surreal nature of the global economy and how it was really being lived out, and how actually it was really elevating the status and importance of all these traders who were kind of basically determining the life of these cities.
I mean, I think we could have a whole conversation just around, you know, the vexed term authenticity, but I think Dubai is actually one of the most authentic places on the planet. Rem, when I look back at the work that AMO and OMA was doing at the time, it seemed to be there were sort of two axes. You know, one was about the question of preservation and what should be preserved, how should things be preserved. The second, which you alluded to and you showed us here, was something to do with the type, let's say the language or the typology of the generic. And I wanted to ask you whether the interest in the generic was an interest in the normal, or is the generic actually antithetical to the normal? And what role does normal and normalcy play in the mind of an architect?
Yeah, that's obviously very complicated term, because if an architect uses the word normal, it is very clear that he actually means exceptionally different from everything that is not normal. So it's a really strategic term that we systematically abuse. But at the same time, there is a kind of generic, and I found it very interesting that since I'm now very often here and can witness the change in the kind of city, that there is an enormous amount of new buildings, that many of them are pretty straightforward, and that the kind of proportion between exception and what I call generic has been kind of constantly adjusted in favor of the generic. And we will see what the end kind of result of this is, whether that people will eventually be happily living in generic city, or be kind of slightly disappointed that there is not enough exception and excess.
And just also just to follow up on that, Charlie mentioned her move to Guangzhou. Your engagement with China has also been going on for many decades, but there was, I mean, in a sort of mythical sense, we talk often about this point after 9/11, where you were, the office was given, was invited to the competition to rebuild the World Trade Center or do the CCTV building. You could have theoretically done both, but you chose to choose one. Could you say something about that decision and how these timelines of your experience in China over this period of time relate to or have dialogue with your experience here in the Gulf during that time?
It's kind of really all kind of part and parcel of the kind of same effort. As I said, it's a kind of an effort to kind of recognize what is happening in cultures not others than the kind of West. But at the same time, of course, I'm not idealizing the kind of situation in China or kind of saying that China is perfect and that kind of Europe and America are kind of terrible. Not at all. but it is kind of simply intolerable to me that there is no awareness of an overall effort and no respect for an overall effort. I think you cannot be in China and kind of see that in spite of whatever you could criticize, there's also a huge effort to improve the kind of fate of immense amounts of millions of kind of people, and the same is true here. So it is simply a kind of sense of, I guess, fairness and maybe also a kind of moralism that is offended by the ease with which we kind of project our so-called values on any other culture than our own.
Thank you. I will open it up to the audience very, very shortly. But Charlie, I want a very simple question. Why did you decide to move here recently? You've explained how things have changed, and I think it was an incredible kind of anatomy, beautifully done, and in a way, I'm sure many of us who either live here or have spent a lot of time will recognize ourselves in so many of your sort of observations. Also this notion of filling up the spaces between and this beautiful idea of buildings collaborating with each other. But I sort of wonder whether, I mean, first, yes, why did you move here? Secondly, the rate at which the change and the evolution happened, has this been, in your opinion, a smooth line, or has it actually jumped timelines over the time that you've been coming here and now spending considerable time here?
The rate at which it's changed?
Yes. But first, why? Why have you moved here?
Well, I moved here because every time I've been here, I've just felt incredibly happy. That's like the basic answer. Okay. And there's a kind of like happiness and a joyfulness and an optimism. I've been living in Rotterdam in Netherlands for like 12 years, and that definitely wasn't a particularly optimistic place. And you know, there everyone is talking about the end of the world, and here there's a future. Mm-hmm. And so in that kind of that's pure feeling. Yeah. And then also in 2005, and I was here for the first Art Dubai, and it was very clear that this was going to be a really important hub for a kind of global art world and an alternative art world. But at the same time, that was really first needed to develop a kind of, you know, an indigenous, you know, the artists from here, and it was all really about artists from the region, and Emirati artists were still kind of growing and needed to be developed. And I feel like now this is a place where that's already happened, and that the art world is now evolved enough that it actually is asking for connection to other parts of the world and communicators who can communicate that. So I feel like I can have a role here now. That's
fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up to, I've got a couple of questions, but Z, I wanted to know whether you have a question for your mum and your grandfather. You've asked every question you know. Okay. Ask DeepSeek to help you ask a question. That's what I've been doing. There's a hand up, Sumi here, please. Thank you.
One thing that's changed in Dubai in the last 10 years is how we navigate. And I found this is one of the few cities where Google Maps actually just loses the plot regularly. And you know, and it's partly to do with these two-tier roads like Financial Centre Street. And I've just recently actually turned it off and travelled around using east-west, and you end up in some interesting places, but you also look out of the window more. So it's quite an interesting way of doing it. But I wanted to ask both of you, how, I mean, this is AI essentially that's now telling us how to move around the city. Has this already changed the physical shape of the city? Has it, or is it going to be changing the social shape of the city? And how is it going to affect everything from kind of urban planning to architecture to community, the shapes of communities?
Basically you ask all the questions that I try to answer in the kind of beginning of my presentation. And I think that if you can remember the kind of first image, then you could also kind of say that kind of perhaps Dubai was a kind of city that anticipated AI and that illustrated AI before AI happened.
Charlie, actually, I forgot. Can you tell us about your boots, please?
And this is I'm now making clothes out of my photographs. I'm trying to find a way of not just showing photographs as a flat, but getting them to so you can really live in them. So I'm trying to do analog AI. So yeah. That's if you can go to my Instagram.
Where can we get your boots and your clothes?
You can get them from United Nude.
From United Nude.
Instagram.
It's a family business.
Yeah, and you can go to my Instagram and you can see more about what I'm doing.
Thank you so much. Any other questions from the over here? Can we get the mic over here, please? Z. Oh, and then Z, and then we'll go to Z.
Certainly, Rem, I was wondering if you could expand on the successful commission that I'm aware of that you delivered over at Al Sakal Avenue. Obviously, that kind of fits into a lot of what you were talking about, an old industrial area, warehouses, and it's now a thriving arts and cultural district. And certainly, if you walk around here in the second hall, some of the galleries are well represented here. How did you approach that? Are you happy with how that's kind of rolled out?
Yeah, of course. It was kind of really exciting to do something not necessarily kind of massive in Dubai. And to in a way participate in something that, as Shumon was saying, is essentially about preservation, but not necessarily preservation because something is beautiful, but preservation because you like a certain topology that is in danger to be erased, and you like it because it has a capacity to absorb and to improvise and to be incredibly fluid in terms of what happens there. So it was kind of really the latent energy and the latent kind of sponge-like quality of that area that we wanted to establish or maintain. And in that sense, it got very exciting, perhaps not visually or not typically as a kind of architectural effort, but very exciting that we could participate in that.
Thank you. Z, did you have a question? Oh, you're still asking Deepsy. Okay. I have another question. All right. Can we get a microphone over here to Z, please?
Mom, why did you want to become an artist?
Oh my God. I definitely did not want to become an artist. I wanted to become a psychologist, but I just came from the wrong family.
I'm still paying for it. I'm still paying for it.
Why did I become an artist, Rem?
Z, do you have a question for Rem?
Why do you like architecture so much?
Well, yeah, I've spent enormous amount of effort to move away from architecture and to do anything but. But it is also, I have to admit, kind of finally a very beautiful profession. It can be a very beautiful profession because you imagine something that doesn't exist yet, and that in your most optimistic considerations does something for people and that they actually need.
I'm going to, Rem, if you don't mind, you're writing a book about your life, organized by the places that have played a critical role in shaping your ideas. I wanted to ask you, what role does Dubai in the Gulf, which surely includes Doha and Qatar, through your long-term engagement there, what role does this region play in the landscape of your book? I'm mindful you might not want to give too much away, but could you say something, please?
No, I want to give nothing away, and so I'm a little bit upset that you can raise it. But so I'm not writing a book about my life. I'm kind of trying to write a book that is not about myself, but basically about all the engagements I was able to initiate, but also to respond to in the age of globalization. because I think that to some extent we are the first generation that had this opportunity to kind of work in Russia, China, blah blah blah, and I felt it was kind of important to explain that, but also to try to justify it, because as you know, there's been a kind of unrelenting criticism for working in Russia, for working in China, for working in the in the Gulf, and I wanted to not only justify myself, but actually try to convey the depth of new ideas that can come from it. And also the depth of diplomacy and the depth of communication. Because I very often felt in a kind of situation where it seems as if diplomacy is become completely abandoned, that a certain intelligence and a certain tact and a certain mutual interest in terms of achieving something together was a very important thing to produce and to show evidence that it's still possible.
Charlie, is there a question you'd like to ask Rem?
Well, if there is something that is there something you would like to do now in Dubai? In which way would you want to engage the city?
I've never been able to kind of really to talk like that, because really literally one of the interesting thing about architects is that you can never want something or want to do something, but that you're totally dependent on being asked or being offered or triggered by others. And that has been kind of for me a very interesting situation, because you're like a doctor, and you have your art, your knowledge, your experience, but nevertheless, on your own, you cannot do anything with it, because you need to wait for a case. So I want to really keep it that way. But what I can say is that if I'm trying to be kind of super optimistic, that I can see that after a kind of maybe a decade or a decade and a half of breaking globalization or basically retreating from globalization, that the kind of irony could be that the Trumpian episode forces the rest of the world to become more collaborative again.
And Charlie, last question.
That is something I'm actually hoping.
Actually, related to that, Charlie, I've taken you shopping here to very special places where we get some special versions of our favorite brands. We've seen this whole thing blow up now. No, the kind of conversations I think I have with everybody that I take to Karama. We go up to these kind of secret rooms and we buy, these incredible, these aren't real Balenciagas.
Oh wow, we
right?
were just wondering.
Or are they? And I think there's this whole thing that's blowing up now on TikTok, which is amazing, no? Where Chinese, various Chinese TikTokers, but also various Chinese owners of factories are basically, pulling back the curtain and saying that all of these things that you thought were made in Italy, they're made here, And this is what they really cost, and this is what the markup is. And you know what? If you could just order it directly from us for a fraction of the price, and in a way, you're getting the real thing, but without the kind of cynical exploitation, perhaps, one way of looking at it, of that incredible markup. I wonder if you've been following this and how you think about this in relation to all these other things that we've been talking about.
Well, firstly, I thank you for your tours through the fakes, and it's funny because lots of people have wondered: is there something underground in Dubai? There is nothing illegal, So how can there be some sort of underground without illegality? And what's so funny is that even the illegal and the underground is shopping, basically. That's how pervasive shopping is as an activity. But yeah, of course. I mean, that's what the best thing about Dubai is the fakes, and the fakes tell you. That's why I had City Lust perfume, but I also have feminism perfume, and I have black power perfume. And so, in a sense, the fakes tell you about ideology and what is valuable, and so that's what I like about.
Amazing.
I have a kind of slightly European answer. I think it's kind of in a certain way too easy to kind of pretend that by showing that a certain bag can be made for $5 and sold for $50,000. Because at least you have to admit that the original designers were capable of imagining and creating fetishistic objects that were completely irresistible to the rest of mankind. But I think we are in a kind of much more interesting kind of moment where actually, and I think you can see it in cars, that at this point Chinese are producing better cars, more intelligent cars, more fetishistic cars, and more irresistible cars than is happening in Europe. So I think it's not so much that there is corruption in the deal, but I think the balance is kind of genuinely turning.
Absolutely agree. And I actually think it's the next, I mean, there's a timeline here, and we're on that part of the timeline. We've run out of time. Just to let everybody know, that was day one of the new normal. We continue day 2 tomorrow here at 2:30 p.m. Please come and join us for some other amazing sessions. Straight after this now is the Digital Summit, which is a kind of close cousin, and there's some really amazing sessions. So, but here's a request. Either please stay in the room for the Digital Summit, or please make your way outside, because there needs to be a very, very fast turnover. And with that, will you please join me in a huge round of applause, and thanks to Rem Koolhaas and to Carly Koolhaas. Thank you.